Okay, well, this week has been going crazy with news. I've honestly had to hold off on making this video because new things kept popping up every day, but I've spent the last week compiling every detail I could find between recent interviews, statements, articles, and even blue sky posts to share the full picture with you all. And I'll be honest, it's very much a mixed bag of bad and good news. So let's break down the timeline a bit. Just the other day, Okami 2 was teased at the Game Awards. I'm a huge fan of the original, so you can imagine how happy I was to see it. The fact that this insolvent classic managed to find funding for a sequel 18 years later is something I never expected, and I doubt anyone else did either. The original Okami is a game that a lot of us hold very close to our hearts, but it never sold well despite being on like every video game console known to man. It's quite simply a masterpiece of a game, but an extremely underrated one. The director of Okami 2, though, will be Hideki Kamiya. He's the man responsible for directing the original Okami. So that really is more great news, honestly. Conversely, we all know Kamiya is from PlatinumGames, the studio that develops the Bayonetta series and so many other fan-favorite games, like Nier Automata, Astral Chain, or Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. I'm sure you've heard of at least one of those. Now, if you've paid attention online, though, you know that Kamiya left PlatinumGames about a year ago. And while it sucks to no end that there was turmoil between him and the rest of the studio, Okami 2's teaser at the Game Awards felt like a silver lining. And it is, don't get me wrong. However, fast forward a few days and we have more insight into what's going on at PlatinumGames and with Kamiya's newly formed studio, Clovers. Now, we already know that Kamiya left PlatinumGames because he had creative disputes with the CEO. He said that he lost trust with the company because he wanted to focus on crafting unique gameplay experiences, while Inaba, the CEO, made it clear he wanted to focus on shifting PlatinumGames towards a more profitable path. And honestly, as a fan of the studio, it's kind of hard to side against either one of them. I absolutely love Kamiya and Platinum's creative game experiences. There's nothing out there quite like Nier Automata, or Astral Chain, or Bayonetta Origins, or hell, even Bayonetta 3. Matter of fact, a lot of the developers at PlatinumGames are even responsible for developing the original Okami, another insanely creative game in its own right, because they all came from Clover Studios, which is not to be confused with the newly formed Clovers Studio. It's kind of confusing for newcomers, but I'll explain it more later. Anyways, yeah, PlatinumGames is made up of a bunch of people from the original Clover Studios, and they made a bunch of unique bangers while being employed no matter which studio name they were under. Sadly though, to Inaba's credit, almost every game developed by PlatinumGames has sold poorly. Bayonetta Origins was their most recent release, and despite it being one of the best games made in 2023, it only sold like 6,000 copies worldwide. That's absolutely dismal, and a spit in the face to the developers who crafted such an amazing game with passion and talent. So, what went wrong? It's hard to say. I'm willing to side with bad marketing, but I have no clue what other factors could be at play behind the scenes, especially considering Platinum has had a much better track record on Nintendo Switch than any of their previous endeavors. I know that Kamiya has expressed immense interest in making PlatinumGames become self-published, but perhaps Inaba appreciates things like the high and reliable funding Nintendo has been providing them to make what they want. Bayonetta 2, Astral Chain, and Bayonetta 3 all broke 1 million sales within a few months of releasing on Nintendo Switch. That kind of consistency was never the norm for Platinum. They're used to a lot of their games selling less than 1 million for any given title, no matter how good the game is or how much time has passed. The exception to this was Nier Automata, their highest selling game of all time with over 7 million, and that game was published and heavily marketed by Square Enix. So there's definitely value in having wildly wealthy publishing companies like Square Enix and Nintendo fund your games, especially when they let you have as much creative freedom as you want like Nintendo does for Platinum. And they also don't seem to penalize them too much for low sales, since they broaden the gaming library of Nintendo in ways no other developer could. PlatinumGames is one of the few M-rated devs who make Nintendo exclusives after all. I have no doubt that the extreme backlash to Bayonetta 3's ending and Bayonetta Origins' lackluster sales by proxy to that backlash led to a major dispute amongst the staff of Platinum. It's hard to tell which side wanted what, but one side of PlatinumGames seemed dedicated to killing off the titular character of Bayonetta and replacing her with her much less interesting daughter, and others seem to want to walk that back and give hope that the famous witch will return somehow. I mean, if you ask me, it would be a huge marketing mistake to make another Bayonetta game and not feature, well, Bayonetta. She's literally in Super Smash Bros. For Christ's sake. Non-fans of the series will be confused to see Bayonetta titled and then see Viola's ugly mug taking up the screen, and true fans will just be mad and not buy the game because, well, we love Bayonetta and we want to play as her. It could very well be this logic right here that separated Kamiya and anyone on his side from the rest of PlatinumGames. Perhaps Kamiya really was the one pushing to keep Bayonetta dead and have Viola replace her going forward, but Inaba might have said, "Do you realize that would be a nightmare to try and market?" Conversely, Inaba and his side of Platinum might have been the ones pushing to keep Bayonetta dead because perhaps they want a more family-friendly presence as their Bayonetta. And Viola, I guess, does offer that. Since Bayonetta has become synonymous with being sexy and provocative, Viola would simply be punk rock tomboy girl. Again, it's really hard to say which side wanted what, but all this is to tell you that not only did Kamiya leave PlatinumGames, but he's brought most of the talent that we're used to seeing at Platinum with him. That's right, the same people who were originally in Clover Studios, then transitioned to PlatinumGames, seem to be transitioning back with Kamiya to the new Clovers studio. Sorry, I'm doing my best to differentiate Clover Studio from Clovers, the studio, so bear with me here. Anyways, I'm sure that some of the new talent has followed them as well, but this Blue Sky post by Abebe Tinari made it very clear that some of the most talented developers at PlatinumGames left to join in Clovers. Apparently, a lot of them even worked on Bayonetta Origins, so you know, these were some of Platinum's best developers, as the game was phenomenal. This is further cemented by Twitter posts by JP Kellums, who stated that upon seeing who's listed as the developers in the Clovers website, that PlatinumGames has now lost its luster. He also stated that everyone he saw transition to Clovers from Platinum are the ones he'd be willing to work with, insinuating that everyone left at PlatinumGames after these departures are no good by comparison. Now, I should mention that Abebe Tinari gave a much more positive announcement about this, stating that while he's excited to see most of the talent move over to Clovers, because, we all want to see Okami 2 succeed, he thinks the fresher developers left at PlatinumGames are also very talented, and will get to show the world what they've got, even going so far as to say he's excited to see what they do next. So Tinari doesn't really seem to have anything bad to say about the developers left at PlatinumGames. Now, some of the major devs who did switch to Clovers include Abebe Tinari himself, as stated within one of the Blue Sky posts, which to me is the saddest departure aside from Kamiya, since Tinari directed Bayonetta Origins, which was one of my favorite Bayonetta games, Kenji Saito, the director of Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, Takahisa Taura, the director of Astral Chain, and Masaki Yamanaka, director of Anarchy Reigns. These are all beloved games by Platinum fans. 2 of them even sold really well. So make of this what you will when it comes to deciding if PlatinumGames will remain high quality, and how Clovers will stack up by comparison. Now, it is time though to address the elephant in the room. I already know the biggest question on everyone's mind, because, well, it's on mine too. What will happen to Bayonetta? Will there be no more Bayonetta games? Is the series truly over now? Well, that comes down to a question of who holds the rights to the franchise. Believe it or not, but PlatinumGames does not own the rights to Bayonetta, not even partially. Bayonetta as an IP is owned jointly by Nintendo and Sega. We know that Nintendo has no problem funding the franchise, so that's not even a question. But Sega, well, they're another beast entirely. Luckily for you, this week also happened to feature a new statement by Sega on their plans for the future. And it is fairly good news. Just a couple days ago, the former gaming giant said they plan on changing their path forward to becoming an IP powerhouse. So they plan on funding their franchises and even reviving older ones, and they want to make all of these franchises multimedia. So we could even see more Bayonetta anime, and possibly even some manga if the series continues on the upward trajectory it was on before Bayonetta Origins, sales-wise. It would honestly be hard to imagine them not funding Bayonetta when she's, again, even a character on Smash Bros. Now, effectively making her a household name ever since. Funny enough, Sega and Nintendo don't even necessarily need to pay PlatinumGames to make the next Bayonetta game. They very well could pay Clovers to make it. So Kamiya might not lose his baby after all. However, whether or not he or anyone at Clovers would want to do that is another question. Kamiya has stated in the past he hates doing sequels, so there's that. And I guess that makes Okami an exception or something, or maybe he just needs a certain amount of time to pass before he works on a sequel. But the same goes for PlatinumGames. Again, we have no idea which faction of PlatinumGames wanted to continue Bayonetta as a household name with a titular character moving forward, or even which vision Nintendo and Sega would side with funding. Like, would they want Viola to be the new face of Bayonetta, or do they acknowledge that that would be terrible for marketing? Who can say? But one thing's for sure. Bayonetta, as a franchise, is very likely not dead. And that's perhaps the most relieving news to know about this whole debacle. Now, there is more news to discuss regarding the studio transition, and we'll talk about that over the next few days, so be sure to stick around the channel for that. But I want to know, what is it that you want from the developers and the Bayonetta franchise moving forward? It's a very nuanced conversation, so let's be sure to discuss it further in the comment section. Afterwards, check out more of my videos, like this one right here where I discuss why Bayonetta 3 was so controversial, despite being a phenomenal game. Or the one on the left that dives into Bayonetta origins and how it fixes much of the ending of Bayonetta 3. I also have these linked in the pinned comment below, so take your pick on a more positive or more negative video. I've been johtojonny, and I'll catch you all there.